Table Talk is not your typical D&D ttrpg podcast. We are not here to run you through our whole campaign.
We're here to talk about everything else in the space of tabletop roleplay.
I'm your host, Alejandra Wilhelm.
And I'm also your host, Mariah Gresham.
And we're your tabletop roleplay girlies. And we are live back at it with another episode of Table Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have another really awesome guest episode and a really special guest that I'd love to introduce. We have Luis. You want to give us a little introduction about yourself and what you do and where people can find you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Luis Carazo. I'm an actor and I'm a ttrpg enthusiast and video gamer, and I'm on the internet. If you put my first name and last name together, you will find me on any of the social spaces. And I do TV, film, commercials, and live theater on occasion. Wow. And if your audience is a tabletop audience, then they will probably know me from things like LA by Night or stuff on Critical Role.
Heck yeah. LA by Night was actually like the first place that I ever saw you on, and I remember Mariah being the one that introduced me to that.
I did.
As soon as I saw you pop out, and I was like, "You didn't warn me about this character."
I said no. I said watch it. Could watch the entire thing. You don't get to jump to Nines or to Brennan's priest character for reasons that we're not going to discuss a minute into the episode. But no, you're going to sit with everyone else and watch the entire story.
That entire cast is amazing, but that was the first place I saw you. And then I also saw the Calamity stuff, and that was phenomenal work.
Still not over that.
No.
Me neither.
That's one of the things in Critical. I'm not over that. I'm not over Vox Machina. I see my mother. I'm not over.
It's
Let's not finish Vox Machina, so I am referring to that vaguely.
I'll get there. But yeah, we actually got to the pleasure of meeting you at PAX, which was lovely. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on and have a quick chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we could talk a little bit, especially because of now I've seen a few, you've been on Calamity. I've seen you on the Candela Obscura chapter, which was awesome as well. And just wanted to talk a little bit about just getting into character and that moment when the characters kind of click for you.
I love that because it is such a broad question, but it's also one of those things where it is very individualized. Every person is going to have a very different way of going about that. And even the same person will have a very different approach depending on the character that they're portraying. And I because I am an actor, even though I was a tabletop player first, and that's part of what sparked my love for acting, I always kind of understood it in a similar fashion. It is a role-playing game, and I guess even when I was in high school, the group that I played with was really about not full immersion necessarily, but really giving into the story that we're telling. Mm-hmm. And my friend in high school, Karen, who was our dungeon master in our home game, was obviously it was no surprise to us that she went on to become a creative writing major because she was the one that was crafting this whole incredible world, and it was really fantastic. Just like you can sit down two different professional actors and ask them to explain their process, and chances are neither of them will be able to articulate it in any tangible way. But if you find two actors that can, they will likely have have moments in what they articulate that are vastly different from each other, because I do think that every actor has their own very unique process. So for me, a lot of it based on some of the training that I've had and me finding things that click for me. I'm really interested and curious about how any character, any person sees the world, and how they think the world sees them, the people around them. What beliefs do they have about the world and their place in the world, and how the world sees them. So it's kind of an automatic thing that I'm curious about especially if I'm learning a little bit about the world from the game master. I very often want to hear them talk a little bit about the world and the setting, and then from there I kind of start to, I don't know, I start to become curious about the people in the world and a perspective in the world, and maybe someone I'm curious about, like, embodying in that world. Like for Xerxes specifically, I knew it was the Age of Arcanum, and I knew that the fall of the height of civilization was what was being explored, and hubris was being explored, and I knew that the hubris of the magical wielding people is, and their ambitions. I know that that is some, like, an obvious place to explore that kind of hubris, but I was adamantly, even before that, I was curious about the redemption paladin specifically. I remember talking to my friend Rob, who's in 2 of my home games, and I said to him, I feel like a redemption paladin is an incredibly toxic
Oh,
absolutely. There's so much good stuff baked in. Like, as someone who currently plays a vengeance paladin, they come ready
they're the same
with so
like
much
rough,
truly.
opposite ends of the same coin. In a way, you know what I mean? Like, so much overlap. So I'm really excited when I'm given permission to explore flawed people. I love it. And I love trying to find a way to make them as human as possible. You know, so that's kind of how my kind of, I guess, character development begins. First is understanding the setting of the game that I'm playing, because there's already a lot of really brilliant creatives that have contributed to what I'm about to step into. Whether it's that begins with the game developers, and then it continues into the storyteller or the game master and the sort of world that they're building. And from there, inevitably, I get some kind of an inspiration about, I don't know, something that I'm curious about within the world that I want to explore, and a perspective that I want to step into or embody. That, like, I mean, you know, a lot of people really understood that, like, the redemption paladin that thinks that truly believes that there is nobody that is beyond redemption.
Redemption.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nobody is beyond redemption. For any play consumers, there's a play called The Last Days of Judas Iscariot. There's a scene between Jesus and Judas that I did in an acting class and I fell in love with. And I was like, I would be lying if I didn't think that there was some of what I worked on in that scene absolutely influenced
channeled
my
into
interpretation. That. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that 1,000,000% came through. It's funny that you bring that up, because I think there is a very biblical feel to some of the things that happen in Calamity, and my brain hadn't quite connected it to Last Days of Judas yet, but I'm like, no, yeah, that is the bridge that I was just swimming through in my mix of hyperfixations.
Yeah. And
it was so impactful too. Like, just the Brennan monologue in that, like, shook me to my core.
Oof. Yeah, like you at home watching feel intimidated. You're like, I didn't even do anything. I'm not even in this world.
I'm just an innocent bystander.
And I'm scared.
You know, it's interesting too, because in the moment, you know, because I had no heads up of what was going to come, and both Brandon and Spencer at some point said to me, "Hey, do you want to have a little bit of a heads up about how this might unfold?" And I said, "Absolutely not," because both times, to them and to other, you know, storytellers that I'm with, I basically present, like, this is how this is a belief that they have. This is what they think is true. And I am letting you know that obviously I don't care whether that is true or not true or partially true. I just want you to know so you can weaponize however you want.
Exactly.
As God intended, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Whatever, something that they believe wholeheartedly. Now, of course, that can change throughout the course of events, because to me, nobody, like, your backstory isn't as important as what's happening in the moment. And so,
absolutely, yeah.
You know, like, because nobody cares about your backstory more than you do, and ultimately, I just allow that to influence, like, the context within which I experience the present. And in the present is me with these other people at the table that are absolutely influencing the trajectory that I go on, and a very, very always they take me down unexpected paths. And what I thought was going to be true for the trajectory of my character arc ends up being different because of interactions that I have with other people at the table. And there's moments with Nidus that absolutely speak to that. And there's moments, with Sean, with Kit Brennan and Candela that speak to that. And absolutely with Zara's character in Candela took me somewhere totally different. In fact, I kind of thought in Candela that I found a resolution to my character arc before it was done. And then it made me discover yet another potential arc. So anyways, I ramble and speak in tangents.
Please do.
When it comes
That's
to
all
stuff.
we do here.
That's the brand, so you're good.
That's the whole thing. That we just bring other people to join Ollie and I now.
Yeah, I'm like, please just hyperfixate with me. There was an episode that we did where we got completely off topic and just talked about our most irrational fears, and I'm like,
I may or may not have been at fault for that one. I don't remember how I derailed us so egregiously,
Mariah
but
grabbed
I did
the wheel and drove us into a ditch, and we all just joined along.
Yeah, I
got a list.
Couldn't tell you. But no, I love that. I love what you said about how, and I don't know if it's just me as a neurodivergent person where I'm always hyper aware of how other people are perceiving me, that thinking about that through the point of a character, it really does immediately slot you in because you're not thinking about that person as an abstract person. Like you are then that person thinking about how other fictional people perceive them. And it's like, oh no, I'm in the Matrix now. Just immediately.
100%.
And that's really, really cool. That's a really good piece of advice.
It's also one of the fun things to explore as a DM, and especially because I've recently started DMing this last year with Mariah and our other group of girls.
Yeah.
And these are my best friends in the entire world, and I know them quite intimately at this point. So they are trusting me a lot with what I know about them as people and what I know they are transplanting onto their characters and maybe try to work through at my table. That's it's a lot of trust, but it's also interesting to see, you've given me what your character believes in. And sometimes that's going to get shattered against the wall of reality. And there's going to be other situations where maybe your point of view has changed and you get presented with the same situation again in a different light. And it might prove your original opinion true. And what are you going to now do since you've now been shattered a little bit?
Yeah.
And how does that affect your character? And those are the really fun elements of, I say humanity, but to kind of play in that space with those characters is so fun and interesting to me.
Yeah. I have a similar thing with, because I run VTM for the same group. Very much. It's Fall of London by the skin of its teeth. And the fact that I took those NPCs and I did what I want with them, and it's court drama right now. The Inquisition will come in later. I just want gay vampire shenanigans for a little bit. That can be messy enough. So it's that with a lot of emotional damage and horror and things thrown in. But I love that system, how they have convictions and touchstones.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about people that are undead, they're not human anymore. And it's what do you do with those little vestiges that remains? And how desperately are you clinging on to your humanity by your fingernails? Because that equally applies to people. It's just easier to talk about in a concept of things that are dead.
Yeah.
And it's when you lose those touchstones or those convictions prove incorrect, what happens to you? And I like that.
I love
that
too.
It's baked in immediately. And that's both Ollie and I have had conversations where we've asked them, so we're we can do whatever we want with the information we've been given. Bet. Okay. Tight.
Yep. Yeah, I'm all about it. And
Peace be with you.
Yeah, let me because I also don't, when I feel like my work as an actor really went to a different place was when I surrendered control. When I stopped working on a scene, beating it out and figuring out the trajectory of it, creating a map.
Yeah.
I connected, I understood how to connect to the circumstances and make the relationships come alive for me. And then I played to find out. I showed up to my scene partner and responded to the best of my abilities to what was happening actually right in front of me, and letting that derail me, take me to a new place that I had never anticipated, as opposed to trying to control my performance and my reaction to their performance to fit some idea of what I thought was right. If you, to me, if I'm connecting to the story and I've done my homework, then the impulses that come up as a result of all of this unexpected things along the trajectory, they will all be honoring the story because I've done my work to connect to those different elements. And that in the same way, I kind of, surrender in the games that we play because I don't see it's an improv. It's all an exercise in improvisation. And so I don't need a heads up from the game master unless it's like a warning about some touchy subject.
Some like lines and veils situation. Yeah.
Something like that. Then cool. Or, for me as like, I'm very often playing the healer, like in one of my games. If another party, and I've said this to people, if you are narratively looking for an out for your character, basically like you want to explore their death, then you might need to tell me because my job is to make sure that you never die.
Yeah.
And I might be the foil to what experience you're trying to have.
You're trying to achieve with this character.
Yeah.
Like,
because
I won't dump that 9th level cure wounds into you if you're trying to head on to the Rainbow Bridge. Like, I'll just let you do that.
I'll find a way to justify that. I'll find some way to justify it. But if I don't know ahead of time, then I just know that I'm never going to let you die. I'm going to try everything that I can because that is basically my function in the group. And if all of a sudden I don't, then it's a break. I'm violating the reality that I'm buying into. But if you give me a heads up, then I'll be able to find a justification for it in the moment. But I can't read your mind. You know what I mean? So like there is aside from little things like that, I just want to discover it as we go and I'm happy to struggle as I process it. I'm happy to flounder. I'm happy to make mistakes because that is precisely what someone with seconds to process something would do in that moment. And I want to experience a flawed person who's struggling because there's something clearly wrong with me that I want to experience that. But it's
Listen,
exciting.
It's all of us. You're safe here.
Thanks.
That's also such a good way of putting, like, because I feel like for me, like both Holly and I have talked about like wanting to do improv classes and wanting to get better at voices and the different like technical aspects of acting. And I feel like it's so, again, ex-gifted and talented kid. Like I can make anything analytical and pick it apart into a to-do list. But
I just have queer audacity, and that's how I run about the world.
It's so easy to focus on that. But like thinking about, you don't have to be afraid to make mistakes because people make mistakes and you're playing people.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of the whole bag. Like you can just show up and do it. And I'm like, ooh, that's both true and uncomfortable because it removes the comfy excuse that I'm not wanting to make a mistake, right? But that's also such a good and freeing way to think about it.
Well, let's just go there.
Hey, go for it.
There is absolutely the tendency for queer people to compensate for what is perceived as a flaw or a brokenness in them by outwardly projecting something that's getting everything right, that's overachieving, the perfectionist quality that is a part of our overcompensation for this inherent flaw that we have, this inherent wrongness or brokenness that we need to make up for. And here we are talking about how it's part of the human experience to embrace the messiness, the imperfection, because it truly is. Like it is absolutely what makes people compelling is their flaws and their potential to fail. Perfection is actually quite boring because perfection is.
If you're perfect all the time, it makes the wins stale.
And it's predictable.
Yeah.
Like it's not exciting. It might be nice to look at for a moment, but it's not, we don't relate to it. And so, here's that dichotomy of like, embrace your imperfection, but also you come from a world that an internalization of there is this flaw and this brokenness, and now you have to overcompensate for it.
Yes, you have to like automate the humanity out of yourself. Or compensate for the fact that you are a person, and like an organic thing and not a machine.
Yeah, that statement fully took a shot at me through the internet right between the eyes, but I'm fine. It's cool. I'm dealing with it.
I've been here in therapy, so I'm good. But I still felt it, and I was like, it's accurate. It just wasn't the first time I've visited that.
It's also generally like what you said earlier too, that relinquishing control, not just in how you play your characters, but like I think the game in general too, because as both as a player and as a DM, and I'm like Mariah, I'm sure can relate to this too, because we're both very like control oriented people. We do like to control like all the elements of our lives and like plan everything and all of that stuff. And TTRPGs in general are such a great exercise at relinquishing that. And when I first started, it was very like structured, and I was trying to follow the book and trying to get everything by the letter. And then I quickly realized that the things that my players are making up on the spot are so much more interesting than anything that I could have planned or read or any of that. And I wanted to go chase that. So I started letting go more and more and realizing I was also enjoying the experience more by doing that. And it's like a weird, uncomfortable space to be in because it's very counter to anything the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But it's a great exercise in that. And then like I think being a DM, relinquishing control in that way has also made me a better player. And I'm also just aware of the things that are going on behind the screen. So now to my DM, whoever DMs for me, I'm also like kind of thinking in that space of what they're managing and trying to play my character as best I can to help facilitate the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so nice to have, I try to do this too. Like I'll check in with the DM and ask them, are you having a good time? Are you telling a story that you're enjoying? And how can I help you in that? And almost always are like, man, if you're having fun, I'm having fun. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to say.
I want to know what's going on
like
in
how
your
are you
noggin.
doing? Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what can I do to help you? One of the things that I absolutely do is I treat their NPCs like they're real people, because that's the player that's the character they get to play. And you can tell sometimes when they're playing an NPC that's more significant. And so I will interact with them. I'll lean into that a little bit so that they get to have a moment with someone that is significant to the story, as opposed to just there to facilitate stuff for us. And, you know, they're also playing NPCs that are like, you know, important to our backstory and stuff. So I don't know. It's something I try to do.
Because you really do, like, you'll sit and you'll like go out and try to think through, even though I've ironically semi-famously become the person who doesn't plan at all for her sessions when she runs, just sits down with like audacity
has been
and a dream.
Hilarious to watch, and it's always great.
Nice.
Insane. For anyone who knows me, that is the most antithetical thing. Like, no, if you had told me that's how I would be, I would be like, you're absolutely insane. And I think it was something similar with Olive. Like, I picked up the Fall of London book and I'm like, I like this setting. It's cool. It's interesting. There's a lot going on. I know a decent bit about it, which is nice. So we're all very new to BTM system. And I really the only one with a decent bank of lore knowledge, mostly from like binge watching LA by Night and New York by Night and like anything Jason Carl touches, because he's incredible.
Yeah.
But like brain loop. Sometimes my brain really just turns off in the middle of a sentence, and that's great.
I'm with you. We're talking about like NPCs and making sure that the storyteller is engaged in the story and
oh yeah, and not planning. But I think like so I found that setting. Yeah, not plays. Like I found that setting, and then similar with our Strixhaven game that Ollie runs, of like all my players gave me really cool characters, and I'm like, ooh, this fits into the drama that I want to play with so well. And so it's like, well, how do I bring that? How do I make that work into like Fall of London? And I was trying to sub things in and out. And then honestly, the first session I ran, it was semi-sprung on me. So I was like, I could do it. And like, oh, well, do we want to play? Like everyone was into Austin at my place. And I'm like, yeah, fuck it, let's play. And I just started running it. And the first session, they went to court. And it's a Camarilla campaign.
Oh, whoa.
So the first session of any TTRPG that I ever ran was a court episode with a bunch of NPCs, and I had not prepared at all. And apparently,
man,
you did great.
That was the most imposter syndrome I've ever had. Like, there's no way anyone's enjoying this. And I was like, no, it's fantastic. And I'm like, how? Because I've blacked out for the last. I couldn't tell you what happened. It's absolutely ludicrous. And similar thing of like going in, like, we're going to play this weekend. I figured out one thing I need to know, that like they were being sent on a quest to get a thing that's related to other things. And I'm like, I must know what that item is. I can't just say it's a Fabergé egg that has no meaning. I know that. And then I'm like, that's all the planning we're doing tonight, folks. We're just
incredible.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
And, sometimes why plan? Because the plan that you have gets derailed so often. I have
almost certainly
of areas that have never been explored because I was like, I better prep this and this and this. And then they're like, actually, we're going to go over somewhere that I have not prepped. And then I got to like make it.
We're going to climb over the mountain instead of through it. Do you have that map?
Yeah.
I do right now as I make it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
general sense.
We're rock climbing now.
Yes, 100%.
I've had so many nowadays my prepping really does just consist of, I call it like, I get the bones. I get big plot points and like major things.
Mise en place prepping, right? It's like cooking where you chop up all your stuff and everything. It's that effectively narratively.
And then I'm just like, everything, I'm like, I know point A, point B, and point C and D. And like whatever happens in between those points is kind of just up to the players, and I'll find a way to like loop it back around if possible. And then inevitably they also always like throw shit at me that I'm like, yeah, I could have never fucking planned for that in my life. Always.
The 11th hour of any session is free real estate for absolute chicanery.
Truly the last 20 minutes of the last few sessions we've had, I'm just like, okay, that has sent me on a brain rat spiral. Because now there's a bunch of people that should never have met that are now meeting next session, and I have to recount little fucking chess pieces on the board. And we're doing ball court stuff right now. Ooh. Like they've just gone through that. Which the stress of having to play a billion NPCs in a room and remember what everybody else is doing. It's a lot. And I was very, very smooth brained most of those sessions.
Send them to the wilderness after that, and then there's just like, no one but each other.
Oh, I'm going to milli rock these hoes the second they get back to campus. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it.
What does that
Mariah,
mean?
Mind your business.
I'm worried about it. You said it on God's internet. We're here now. Can't take that back.
You'll have to figure it out when we get there.
What does it mean? We're in fantasy college. What does that mean?
Don't worry about it.
What does that mean?
Just don't worry about it.
You get an internship. Sends you somewhere.
Maybe. I don't know. Like
field trading.
Something to say. No, but I do love those elements. I want to ask you too, if because I've had this experience and I know Mariah's had this experience, but have you ever tried to play characters that you're intentionally trying to go out of your comfort zone and struggled with that? And if so, how do you get over that?
Yes. Well, my gosh, I do think that there are elements of Xerxes that absolutely went out of my comfort zone. He's so I realized that while I was kind of making him isolated to justify how he would be easy prey, he became kind of insular in a way. But that was by design, and kind of dark and broody, and
I love to see it.
I mean, it was fun, which is kind of a weird thing to say about that, but I think that in my mind above game, I was aware of choices that were being made to honor the character's blind spots. And I was actually really proud of some of the responses that I would have in the moment that were surprising to me. Like, I kind of thought that I would have a big moment where I would stare down a betrayer god. I mean, that's one of the things that I had hoped for. I said to Brendan, I was like, I just hope that at some point we meet a betrayer. And I kind of thought that at some point we would see one from a distance approaching Avalier, and I would be sent out to confront him as the first night. And I would have to like kind of, you know, I didn't know that it would unfold the way that it did. But I imagine myself having, like, I imagined having this moment where I stared him down in a really dramatic, almost gladiatorial fashion, like raised my weapon and stared him down and, you know,
like riding across the field, like,
and like, you know, basically like gave him a piece of my mind, of my mortal mind, and you know, stood up to him. And instead, as my face was being ripped off, all I experienced was pity and compassion and love towards the person that was putting me through hell. And so I was that was a moment where I was like, oh, that's why I think, you know, you do a lot. I spent time thinking about his worldview so that in the moment I would look at what my impulse would be, and it would inevitably be honoring the like point of view that I was trying to lean into. That's one version of that people may have. I'm assuming people have watched Calamity. I did play. So for Faster Purple Worm, I did a couple live shows, and I absolutely took a couple of moments, live shows, and also the 3 shows that I did for the actual show. I played characters that I feel like went against type in a way. I played a fairy, I played a halfling and something else. Like, people want me to play these like, you know, dramatic things and
big, like broody, like
and I'm really very whimsical. And so
you are very whimsical
you are.
in real life.
In real life, I'm whimsical. I feel like I talked to you. I said this when we were maybe talking in PAX. I was like, I'm whimsical.
Yeah.
You are.
You're like, no, you
like,
absolutely
no, you are
are.
in fact whimsical.
Thanks.
You're big whimsical theater kid energy. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, I don't know. I think like for me, playing, leaning into that is always, I don't know. I felt like it may seem insignificant to people, but I felt like it was out of how I am in my body, but I wanted to be out of that, you know, like I basically just want to play Samwise Gamgee, you know, something that I would never be considered for because I'm too, you know, broody. Yeah, I'm resting broody face.
You're too good at playing the broody character.
You're
too good at playing the broody
character out here.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, and any kind of huge shift in sort of mannerism or characterization, to me, it has to start kind of small. And I never, I'm really, really happy with doing shit my own way and not feeling I need to do it how other people do it. And so for me, what feels like a big shift in my voice or gesture or body, I just do it in the way that feels right for me, and without feeling I need to make it so it translates 1,000% to an observer. Like, to me, Marion was a completely different characterization than Xerxes. Not because I tried to give him a different voice or physicality or gestures or anything. In fact, I made it a point to not try to, but I wanted to trust, like any, you know, I just wanted to trust that the point of view would be different enough. And for me, it was different. For me, the experience of the point of view was different. And so therefore it was enough for me. And I guess that is, I mean, I'm not really just giving some examples of things. Here's what I'm doing is I heard your question, and what I translated it inadvertently into is, what has made you self-conscious about some of the choices that you have made or some of the moments that I've experienced? And I guess that's I kind of gave a list of moments that in it, you're just in it. And then maybe afterwards, I wonder.
You're like overthinking that.
Yeah. Pick it apart. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Which at the root of it, I think, is also like a lot of what me and Mariah have experienced in those like situations where we've had those moments with characters.
Oh, absolutely.
because I know for mine, it was like a lot of self-consciousness, both in the moment at the table and like me overthinking those moments afterwards. Cause I really was stepping out of my comfort zone, and I don't have an acting background. I don't have those like foundations to fall on, and didn't really know what resources to kind of pivot to. But I think, what you mentioned about like making the changes that are most comfortable to you is absolutely key. Because I know like a lot of people probably experience that. I know me and Mariah had a lot of self-consciousness about even starting to DM, because we're not like voice actors either. Like I don't have that dog in me particularly.
Yeah. I do voices, not accents, and half the voices are just borderline insulting to people. Like it's not, I don't say what culture it's from because it would offend someone. Yeah.
It's just what you have available that can give a different characterization.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But like I remember whenever I was considering like doing DMing, I was a little bit self-conscious because our DM at the time like was very good at doing voices and sound effects and all of that stuff. And it was very much like a point where we felt like that was a requirement. And until I started watching other actual plays, and the clicking moment for me was when I watched Abria do a Court of Fae and roses. I'm blanking.
Court of Fae and flowers. A Court of Fae and flowers. Court of Thorns and Roses is.
I know. You know exactly where my brain went.
I keep it right here.
But when I saw that and like watching Abria DM, like made it click for me that I'm like, it doesn't have to be so much, and it could be mannerisms. It could be just like a subtle change in tone. And I'm like, I can do that. And that was really the moment that it made it accessible to me. And it's making the changes that feel good to you, and they will translate at the table. Like we've had tons of impactful moments where I'm like, I don't have to be out here making myself sound like a 7 foot tall orc man. Like, no, you just know what that is.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like you're not, I think a lot of fell into the trap of trying to like cosplay as someone who could do this character the way my brain thinks it should be done. Right? Like cosplay as an actor or a thespian, or like, like I was a bandkin, supposed to like different type of friend, but like side nerdy, right? Different animal. And like for Abria was a big one for me, but for me, the one that really unlocked it in my brain, and maybe this is why I latched onto VTM so heavily, was Jason Carl. Because he does a lot of physical acting in a way that really just clicks for me. And his voice changes some, but not so dramatically, where it's not even always noticeable. It's these very, very, like you said, subtle, small changes that you still pick up on because like you're a human that's reading social cues and picking up on like a million little nonverbal things. But like it works. And you don't have to go out and like
give a whole goddamn performance with sound effects coming from your throat.
100%. Like you because we're all also imagining what's unfolding, and we have a sense of who they're portraying. Just like when you're reading a book, I don't go out of my way when I'm reading a novel to make sure that every single person in my head has an utterly distinct everything. There's other things that are doing the legwork that can help me understand and buy into the 3-dimensionality of that character, and my imagination giving over to that narrative is a huge part of it. So, even when I'm at the table with Jason Carl, who's been my storyteller multiple times, and Abria has run games for me too before, and I don't see the difference because I'm taken by. I can almost visualize my own interpretation of what they're visualizing and finding the words for, and that is that's enough. In fact, if that's missing from someone who could do voices, then I'm not it. You know what I mean? Like you gotta you can't just have the facility but have it be empty. You gotta have the heart of it in, and the richness of the world that you are conveying, which they absolutely both do. I remember the first time a Brio was, and I don't know, even this isn't even anywhere. This was like
like a private
workshop
game.
like a private game, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just remember the way, and I remember texting her afterwards saying, "Man, the way that your use of language and the way that I just like, it's like I'm watching a painting happen with words, and it just really sucks me in. It's there's so much more than just the surface like characterizations. Um,
For sure.
yeah, uh, yeah, acting, acting. But it really is. I've
Theater of the
become
mind is a
really
hell of a drug.
yes,
Honestly, yeah.
and there isn't there really is no benefit. I think like the way that professionals are doing it. One of the things that I sometimes feel a little bit down on is when I meet somebody at a convention and they say things like, "Oh, well, we watched how you guys have done it and you're professionals and we can never do it like that." And so they don't try to do it on their own. And I'm like, no, we're all meant to be storytellers in this capacity, in any capacity. And you don't know the kind of storyteller that you are meant to discover yourself to be if you don't give yourself the opportunity to try that. And we were all intimidated at some point, but then stepped into it and discovered and are still discovering the kind of storytellers that we all are on this side, on the professional side, and that was quotations. But like everybody is that. Everybody is worthy of storytelling and embodying different characters and points of view and exploring what it means to be like a hero within the parameters of the setting that they're in, which, as you both know, that shit is different when you're in Dungeons and Dragons or in Vampire the Masquerade. It all
100%.
plays out
That's why that's the one I read. I love my fucked up stories.
Differently.
Yes, yeah. I love my dark horrific, emotionally damaging tales. Like,
yeah.
Love it.
We have a very privileged table because we get to we dedicate like a whole weekend to it. And like now every single player is taking up the mantle of being a DM. So everyone gets a chance to like sit and play and everyone's taking up different genres and things like that. Nice. So it's nice. We're very happy with our particular squad. But it's also, like you mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, well, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna touch on the whole like people getting intimidated to enter that space. And it's very much like you can find a space where your story is going to be received and you can find a table that is going to be receptive to the story you want to tell. And like, absolutely agree. Everybody should attempt it at least once because I for sure thought I'd never do it. And I'm so happy that that's not true.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, I think also like finding people who like for me, like when I started, the fact that I picked up a system that no one had touched before helped because like if I had tried to run like when we were playing with our old DM, I'm like, there's no way I could run a D&D game with this man who has an encyclopedic knowledge of the rules. And like, it's the perma DM like gets let out of the cage to create chaos kind of thing. And I'm like, I can't go toe to toe with that. But like in a new, like none of my players now have that orientation toward it, but yet everybody kind of being on a little bit of unsteady footing in a new system gives us a lot more room to bounce off of each other and be a bit more agile and figure it out together in a way that's really fun.
It's also if something gets done wrong, we're none the wiser.
Yeah, which that's always nice too.
Living in blissful ignorance over here.
Yep.
Great place to be.
Mm-hmm.
What other systems are you all playing? So you have Dungeons and Dragons, you have Empire.
Yeah, so our friend Bex actually helped kickstart a new one that is a monster hunting one.
Monster hunter one, yeah.
Ooh.
And we're excited for that one to come in, and we've already like looked at what our characters are going to be for that. And then Alyssa has recently taken up doing one-shots to kind of like test the grounds, which has been really nice because all her one-shots are very combat heavy and we're very roleplay heavy in our campaign. Mm-hmm. So that gives us like a moment to kind of like stretch the whole mechanics and the crunch.
Go a little third-person shooter on them and just like, dig into those abilities, which is cool.
Yeah, so she's building us up gradually in one shots to eventually face Tiamat because she has a Tiamat mini that she wants us to go up against.
Hell,
So every
it's like
one
a
shot we've
quite
been doing
large
is
Tiamat mini that I
yeah,
got her.
Ooh.
So I'm like,
yeah. So we've been
Gotta use it.
graduating up in level. She'll be like, okay, this time it's like level 8 characters. This time it's level 15 or 12
we're
or
up
whatever.
to 10, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's working us up so that she gets comfortable running like higher level, and work us up to that point.
Nice.
I don't think she's interested in ever running a campaign, but she's down to run little one shots. And then I'm we're eventually going to do an actual play ourselves, but that's like a year or two out as we're planning and getting everything ready for it. But I'm very interested, especially with the podcast. We've been exploring a lot of new systems, which I'm very excited about. But I think I want to try that like MCDM one that's going to come out eventually, because I liked a lot of what he talked about, like the more kind of dynamic and narrative combat in that. And I felt like it would click a lot better with us because we do enjoy combat. But I do think that the way they do it is going to be more dynamic and keep our attention more.
Yes.
And then I've also adopted a little bit of another Kickstarter that was like Session 0, which is like a way to create characters.
Yeah, I got that system at PAX, like the little box. It has like 3 decks, so basically you can just build characters. There's like a legacy one, like a kind of impetus, like climactic event one that's just like shifted your character, and one other thing, like a belief or like a core kind of aspect of that person. And you can draw the cards, you can like roll dice and pick with corresponding numbers, you can pick on vibes, like whatever. So it's a really cool way to like build out some NPCs or different like deities or things that you need. So I was very glad I got that at PAX.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've used that to help them like pick, I guess, the vibe of their character. And I'm basically just designing an entire homebrew campaign around that and going to use the MCDM system as the mechanic part of it.
I don't know that system. I need to now I'm curious.
Look it up.
It seems really
the creator of it, I believe, and I may be mistaken, and I'm so sorry if I'm mistaken, but I think they used to work for Wizards, and they've since broken off and are doing their own thing. And he did like a huge, like 50-minute video explaining a lot of it, and it sounds so cool.
I also was a backer on the Magnus Archives ttrpg because like Magnus really, if it has like, ignited my love of horror, and now I'm just out here again in another like pool I never thought I'd be swimming in. Like I'm working on writing a narrative horror podcast that we can voice cast and like put out under our like Mythos Media label. So I'm super, super excited about that. I need to start like sketching out my scary boys this weekend, so I can start like actually writing script.
We're very excited for that one.
But yeah, I'm obsessed.
Your eyes whenever she said script. Hello.
I know. Ooh, nice.
I'll send it to you if you want to read it. But like, yeah, I will be I've already told my friends, I'm like, I'm so sorry. Both me and then our mutual friend Oak is also obsessed with Magnus. And like, we will be holding everyone prisoner until you play it with us. I'm so sorry. You're legally obligated.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Well, it does look like we are coming up on time, but thank you so much for joining us for this little chat. This was amazing. Give us one last little plug about yourself and where people can find you. Also, any exciting projects that you want to shamelessly shout out.
What can I? Well, later on in the year, a couple things will be announced that I can't talk about yet. But one thing that just got announced is the Lego Dungeons and Dragons set has a one shot that's attached to it that I am in. So
I love that.
I'm in that. It was a really magical experience to be a part of that, because it hit me at some point in it that I two things that I have Lego sets and from when I was a kid and into adolescence, and still to this day, if I'm at Target, I will take a moment and I'll just like go down the toy aisle and just look at the Lego sets. Just peruse.
See what they got cooking.
You know, so something from my past that spoke to my inner child, intersecting with something that I continue to do since I was a child. Kind of intersecting was really pretty magical. So I'm in that. I mean, I've got a couple of commercials that are running right now. So if you're watching, if you think that you saw me on the Lowe's commercial, then you're right, you did.
Hell yeah.
Incredible.
And a short film that's coming out. It's stuff coming out. There's stuff there. I really am proud of a project that is still in post. It's called Suicide Sam, and we've released. It's horror, dark horror, and there's
Right.
more that we're working on beyond that. But they have released some kind of teasers of it. One featuring a lot of my work that is on my Instagram. I got it. I pinned it. It's there, and it's got work that I'm really proud of. So that people can get a taste of that and know that there's more on the horizon with that project.
Heck yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah, there's stuff.
I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, and thank y'all for listening. And we'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Table Talk is a podcast brought to you by Mythos Media Productions, bringing you a new episode every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at TableTalkRPG, or check us out at our website, mythosmediaproductions.godaddyscites.com. All business inquiries can reach out to us via email at info@mythosmediaproductions.com.